There's a moment when the word peace stops feeling hopeful, not because it disappears, but because it keeps getting repeated while nothing actually changes. Every leader says it, every press statement ends with it, every interview gestures towards it, and yet the violence doesn't slow down. It just reorganizes, it hardens, and it becomes procedural. So eventually, people stop asking who wants peace and start asking something far more disturbing. What if peace isn't the destination? What if it's just language people use while preparing for something else? Because here's the contradiction no one sits with long enough. If peace is truly what everyone wants, why does war keep being chosen? Not impulsively, not emotionally, but methodically, with planning, with escalation ladders, with cost benefit calculations, over and over again. At some point, the explanation stops being anger or misunderstanding, and it becomes a worldview. Most conversations about Gaza rush to moral clarity. They look for villains, they look for innocence, they look for someone to condemn or absolve. But morality doesn't explain repetition. Systems repeat, structures repeat, mental models repeat. And if you want to understand why this keeps returning to the same place, you have to stop asking who is right and who is wrong and start asking what kind of world someone believes they're surviving inside. Because people don't act based on truth, they act based on the world they think is closing in on them. Now, this is usually where people pull back because understanding this logic doesn't feel righteous. It doesn't reward empathy. It doesn't offer you clear villains. It doesn't let you feel morally intact. But without understanding this logic, nothing else in this conflict actually makes sense. In Benjamin Netanyahu's world, intentions are background noise. They are statements. They are promises. They are diplomatic theater. What matters is capability, what someone can do to you. That matters more than what they say they want because capability survives mood shifts and elections and treaties. History in this worldview is not a story of misunderstandings resolved. It's a record of moments where restraint was mistaken for safety and safety evaporated overnight. So peace is not an agreement. Peace is the condition that exists when no actor in the system believes they can harm you without catastrophic consequence. This is where Gaza stops being a location and becomes a signal, and how Iran changes the entire scale. Because Netanyahu's mental map doesn't see Hamas as isolated. It's not local, it's not self contained, but it's a component in a wider architecture of pressure designed and sustained by Iran. Iran doesn't need tanks crossing borders. It doesn't need direct war. It needs Israel to feel encircled, stretched, and tested from multiple directions. So Gaza becomes an arm in this architecture, and Lebanon becomes another, and Syria becomes another, and so do militias and proxies. It's a network, and networks don't get negotiated away. They get dismantled or they expand. From inside this worldview, Hamas is not just an enemy. It is a proof of concept, proof that proxy warfare works, that pressure accumulates without triggering full retaliation, that endurance outlasts outrage. So allowing Hamas to remain isn't constraint, it's validation. Validation that Iran's strategy produces results. Validation that proxies can survive overwhelming force. Validation that time favors persistence. And validation spreads faster than rockets do. So I'm going to talk about October 7th in Israel. So October happens, and the damage isn't only the loss of life there, it's what the attack reveals. That deterrence failed quietly, that intelligence gaps existed, and that vulnerability returned without warning. And vulnerability in this worldview is not abstract, it's an invitation. Because every actor watching recalculates immediately. Hezbollah recalculates, Iran recalculates, and every proxy asks the same question. If this worked once, how far can it go? This is where the logic becomes brutally mechanical. If Israel absorbs that level of attack and pauses, it doesn't signal morality. It signals permission. Permission to test that strategy again. Permission to continue to push the boundaries. Permission to escalate slowly. So force escalates not out of rage, but out of fear of precedent. Because in this system, the future is shaped by what you allow to stand in the present. And allowing a threat to survive means agreeing to face it again, but under worse conditions. Now, this is the most uncomfortable reality about this, and this is where the logic becomes hardest to sit with. Civilian suffering is real, it's visible, and it's devastating. But inside this worldview that Netanyahu has, it does not end the war. Because Hamas is believed to operate inside civilian density deliberately, purposely. Civilian presence becomes part of the terrain. And if civilian harm halts military action, then civilian harm becomes a tactic. So stopping doesn't feel humane. It feels like surrendering the battlefield to whoever is most willing to weaponize suffering. That logic doesn't require cruelty. It only requires a belief that the cost of stopping now is greater than the cost of continuing. So when the world calls for ceasefire, Netanyahu doesn't hear relief. He hears delay. He hears time for Hamas to regroup, for them to rearm, for Hamas to recalibrate. Because Iran doesn't need resolution. It needs duration. It needs time. And time erodes deterrent quietly until the next rupture. So peace talks feel cosmetic and temporary, non-binding in a system that doesn't forget. So here's the trap, fully visible. Netanyahu believes overwhelming force prevents annihilation. Iran believes sustained pressure erodes dominance. Hamas believes suffering creates legitimacy and attention. Each strategy only works if it continues. Each actor believes stopping first is fatal. And civilians exist inside the overlap of strategies that all require escalation to justify their own existence. Nobody is actually waiting because waiting feels like losing ground. So this is the prime question. What is the actual goal? If it's not coexistence, not reconciliation, not mutual trust, then what is the goal? And the goal that I came to throughout my thought process here was finality. A world where threats don't pause, they disappear. Whether that world produces peace or guarantees endless resistance depends on something deeply uncomfortable. Whether peace can exist without someone feeling permanently unsafe. So if Israel feels permanently unsafe, then peace cannot exist in Netanyahu's mind. Because the real question isn't whether Netanyahu wants peace. It's whether peace survives once survival becomes the highest moral category. And once you see that, the conflict stops feeling like a debate and it feels like a system that no one inside believes they're allowed to exit.